Neil just got mad at me because he was talking about moving into the apartment downstairs, and I was like, "Do you
Which
have
he
references?"
owns.
Yeah, he's like, "Do you?" I was like, "Do you have references?" Like, you know me, and that's why I need references. So, anyways, all right. So back into the game, Jake. That probably went well. Obviously, your character is going to spend the night. I know he can hear us. Obviously, your character is going to spend the night drinking, celebrating, whatever, the better part of that day. Do you then just end up leaving the next day to go back?
How many days have been here? 2?
Realistically, just two, yeah.
And probably stay another day,
Okay.
and then leave.
Okay, cool. So you head back. When you get back, you're going to be walking into a fun little situation by yourself. But
With Hansa,
Yes.
who will definitely help with whatever this situation is.
Because your travel there and back is shorter than Neil's, and you stayed there less than Neil, so you'll be going back there, which will be fun. But Neil, back on where you are. So when you finally do meet the day of the actual council meeting, the counselor leaves you, as he does many of the days. He leaves early in the morning on days that he has to go and actually serve on the council. And the way that the council works, you can tell based off of kind of like what is on the agenda of grievances, because that's kind of like all put in paperwork prior to the day, usually just a few days, if not a week in advance. Depends on which counselor is going to be there, because they each have different specialties. Specifically, the counselor that you were dealing with, he's somebody that handles commerce. So you kind of like got to speak with him about like kind of like businesses, taxing of those businesses, trade routes, and so on and so forth. So you got to kind of like bend his ear. But it is important to note, while he is helpful with you, you did become friendly. I imagine your character wasn't really overstepping their bounds until you got that real ball rolling. So kind of like, you just understood that, and like, oh, at least I got a foot in the door with this guy. So anyways, when you actually finally go to the full council meeting, you have all 15 of the seats are set. One more detail, my apologies. One of the things you also note is that the council can never be any smaller than 5 people sitting, and is always an odd number. It's one of the things that you learn. So no less than 5, no set numbers, always an odd number. There's what they call half council, which you've counted before, and full councils is all 15. Moving on. So you, when you go to approach the council, it happens similarly to how it did beforehand. The entire hall, when you go walking into it, has been set up, but there's not a single other person inside, because you wanted a private. My apologies. You want private or public council?
I think Ronan would subtly suggest that this would be best handled by the expertise of the elders.
Well, it's the others didn't necessarily get to say anything; they just get to listen in on the conversation.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of if there are national secrets or whatever, you would have a private. If this is a matter of like open discourse,
yeah, I think it probably requires subtlety.
Okay, so you would request a private counsel, and they would honestly honor that. There's no reason for them not to. So when you go meet with them, you step into the room. Similar descriptions beforehand, except for at this point in time, literally every one of those pews is sitting where it was beforehand, with the exception of the upmost front row. The front row has kind of been pushed to the sides, kind of like give a bigger gap between where the 15 counselors are sitting in their tables and where there's actually a really comfortable looking, one would even say a low-end throne seat is set directly in the middle of the room, kind of like over where the 2 pews are moved to the side, the front row pews are moved to the side, so you can sit there. So when you do finally go up, you're announced by, this time an appropriate announcer, literally your herald, will be what announces you coming in. You go in, and they, they're kind of like the council will all stand as you come walking in. It's actually very formal. It's actually kind of, you've never had this kind of a greeting before by people. So it's actually kind of like, oh, wow, this feels so, it's like a lot. And then when you come in, they ask for you to please, Lord Rayron, have a seat. And you take a seat, and you feel very quickly that it's a really comfortable chair. It was carved well. And just a quick examination of it, you can tell this thing is old, like probably over a century old, right? Moving on. So once you finally take your seat, all 15 of the counselors take their seat, varying speeds, because, they're all old. And finally, when they sit, the same one that was kind of like announcing originally beforehand seems to be kind of like the point guy, and he opens up again. Front table, middle seat, etc., etc. He says, and the council, a private council of Leshev in the meeting hall, with Rayrin, the chosen of the Quill, hailing from Kurzfall of Valorin, will begin. Please, Valorin, Lord Rayrin, it is a pleasure to have an opportunity to have the full council meet with the diplomat and leader of a nearby nation. I know that you had many matters that you wish to discuss, so please understand that you have all of our ears and our attention on your words. Please, how is it that our city, our council, may be of assistance to you?
Rayron would stand when he speaks. First of all, may I say, ladies and gentlemen of the council, what an honor it is to finally meet all of you in person. Some of you may know me and some of you may not, and I would like to say thank you for lending me your ear and allowing me to stay in your lovely city for this period of time. I've enjoyed its pleasures greatly.
When you say that, you actually see like a beaming smile coming from, Fox or technically Counselor Fox or Counselor Wood. Because Fox first name, last name. Anyways, you see like a beaming smile coming from him because obviously the two of you have shared a lot of fun experiences together, and a couple of other counselors nod along with it because you had encountered them along the way as well.
Next up, I would like to begin my suggestion for a greater relationship between our two nations, our two cities, by suggesting that we build a road between our two nations. As you know, roads and waterways are the backbone of all good commerce. And while your land here is lovely and pleasant for farming, it strikes me that you have a less than abundant resource of wood, something that we in Kurzfall happen to have in great and superior quality. Therefore, that would be my first suggestion that I ask towards the council here. My next suggestion is a question. I mentioned to you all who were here that Haud Gwen is expanding rather aggressively, and that its leadership could be described, well, in comparison to Le Chev, shall we say, unsavory at the least.
When you say that, one of the other counselors, this guy is, oh god, he might be the oldest one there, has those like bushy eyebrows and like the hair coming out of his ears and his nose and whatnot, like very, very old, saggy skin, feebled guy. If you had to guess, maybe in his, late 70s, human gentleman. And he says, "These are true statements as we've investigated. It seems as though Hard Gwen has certainly been expanding at a rather rapid rate. We've spoken with our allies and our emissary down in Harad, and it's even a concern for them down there. No, they've not gone so far as to outright attack any cities, but from what I understand, they have forcibly taken control of villages and thorps nearby, not far off the outskirts of Hardgwen, or free folk, as Idir has a long tradition of free folk that just like to live in never minds their business with others, forcibly taxed under Hardgwen's rulership. It seems as though the guild masters there have really started to rake them across the coals."
Thank you, Councillor. And as you have heard, these claims have now been verified. As such, I would go so far as to suggest that Loshev is well supplied, well provisioned, and clearly in control of a fair amount of commerce and therefore gold. Gold is what Haud Gwen seeks, and although it may come in several years from now, Haldgwen will wish to take control of that gold. As your good counselor has mentioned, rather, instead of lining the streets of your city with the pleasures it has to offer, you will be cutting off your gold to Haldgwen. Heavy tax rates are not good for tradesmen. And might I suggest furthermore that Kurzfall would also be in a similar situation, and that as sister cities, it would do us well to enter into a defensive pact. Both of our cities boast militia, guardsmen, trained people capable of combat. My city boasts trained people capable of combat, bearing the blessing of our gods. As such, I would wish to make it known publicly that we have entered into friendship and that we will defend each other. This would be formalized in a signing, perhaps, of some form of treaty, and it would be our great honor to entertain some of you in Kurzfall itself.
Well, I certainly like the sound of the many things that you're saying now. You're putting forward ideas that would be beneficial between both of our nations. First point of matter, the first thing that you've brought forward before us was potentially building a road between Loshev and Kurzfall. That is no small feat. Is Kurzfall the closest town in your budding nation?
As of the moment, it is. We have been keen to ensure that our people would enjoy a good quality of life within our capital city, rather than spreading our resources thinly as they have done in Haldgwen. Furthermore, the forest itself is perhaps a problem when it comes to creating a road, and therefore we wouldn't wish to have expanded in your direction before making our diplomatic ties and being so bold as to presume you might want us to do that.
No. A road between the two cities could potentially be a wonderful idea. But again, a road is not a cheap option here. For instance, your nation lies to the east across the river. A bridge would have to be constructed between here and there, and then a road laid across all the miles between the two. This is going to be an expensive matter. What amount of contribution to this road do you believe that Valoran would be willing to make?
Valoran can clear the road and build the road, say, within a good 32 miles of the river. However, it would be up to you to generate, let's say, 16 miles of road and the bridge. I believe that would be about fair. However, we are also happy to supply the wood for the bridge, should you choose to construct it as such. If not, you would require scaffolding. I believe I may be able to talk with our craftsman and get you a reduced price.
Another counselor. Yes, and I think that we might be able to provide for you, considering our population might be greater, some workers to work on the road as well. A mixing of the two groups and a unified effort might be what we need to do if we're going to be starting trade. Perhaps positive things that each group can say about one another, bringing back to the merchants. The more amicable the merchants are with one another, is the more coin that flows into the coffers. And all of us certainly need our taxes for the various projects that we're working on. Infrastructure, as we all know, is not cheap, she says, kind of like smiling and looking amongst the others with a couple of chuckles, a couple of stern looks. One guy you think might be sleeping, same guy as before. They kind of like nod in agreement, and they say, then it's a tentative agreement on how it is that we will go approach this, and we'll come around to this before the meeting is adjourned. Now, of the other problems, the other offers that you were making, any gestures to you?
Yes. that of a defensive pact. If I may be so bold as to speak frankly with you, as leaders of a community, you understand that you are willing to go to lengths to defend it. I believe that Hard Gwen will pose a risk to my people, and it is not in my nature to ignore that. However, the risk posed may come in several years. It is still not worth ignoring that. As such, Kurzful will generate a militia, an army, for lack of a better word, with which to resist Houtgwen. We are in the process of making plans for this. We intend to speak with some of the other towns and cities within Idir and ally ourselves with them, or ask them to ally with us. I believe it goes in the spirit of Idir to not generate a nation via expansion, but by a willing freedom. I believe Idir itself is something that should be created in peace and not in blood. And that is what Valorin intends to create. My fellow leaders and I embody 3 ideals, and that would be logic, knowledge, freedom, and compassion. I believe those are the ideals that you wish Le Chef to be built upon, rather than the crime and expansionism that Hald Gwen has generated.
Another one of them finally speaks up and says, "What you're saying here is not is certainly a concern, and as we've already heard from Counselor, the truths that you have brought forward in your meeting near in a week's time past have turned out to be facts, and so there is a bit of concern with Hardgwen, but we cannot deny the fact that Loshev does have its own trade deals with Hardgwen, and we do make a good amount of commerce in trading with Hardgwen, both directly and indirectly through Forvin and Harrod, specifically Harrod. If we're going to be taking an approach against Hardgwen, it makes only sense that we would also sever ties of trade with them. I understand that might be the wise decision when trying to defend one's own lands, but I also have to say that would levy a heavy tax on our people and what it is that they must endure. I mean, we're talking about building infrastructure, a bridge to span a rather wide and swift river. We're talking about building roads and sure, wood being brought in, and the trade that you bring in is of imports. Don't mean to play it down, but Hardgwen, they offer that and more, so much more.
I understand the wisdom of your words, Counselor, but there is something else you are missing, which is freedom. Hardgwen will not leave you in such a position to benefit from these trade deals when they don't have to. In many years' time, when they have expanded far enough, Loshev will be absorbed by the fledgling nation. And you will be a counselor no longer, I fear.
Oh, and truth be told, the proximity between Hardgwen and Loshev, I might be pushing daisies by the time they get here. He says, and others kind of like chuckle. It was meant to be somewhat a counter, but more to be flippant, like being playful.
I would also like to state that although I myself have traveled to Loshev personally, I've also dispatched men to Forvin, and I intend to travel to Varen. Harrod and Ostrad, I believe, may be too close to Haldgwen to strike up favorable negotiations with. However, do understand that it would not simply be Loshev and Kurzfall standing against Haldgwen. We intend to build an alliance of sorts. We intend to unite Idir.
When you say that kind of falls upon a silence for a few moments, and then a bit of chattering, as others are speaking amongst each other. They're old, so it is a couple of them are saying, Did he say that? Did I hear that right? And kind of like reaffirming that their hairy old ears heard what they thought they heard. And then eventually the counselor, kind of like speaking over, says, could you say that last bit one more time, Lord Rayron?
Perhaps you noticed several months ago a glow spread across the country.
There's a nodding amongst them.
That glow was caused by me and my fellow leaders. We broke a curse that had been lying upon Idir for many generations. We've been given the right to rule by 3 gods. This is why we are called the Chosen. It is our task now to bring about a golden age for Idir, a time where all can enjoy freedom, commerce, and safety. And to that end, we need to unite Idir. Carefully, slowly, piece by piece, as one would coaxing a new horse learning to ride. However, I cannot do this without your aid, counselors. I ask now that you trust in me, my nation, and my fellows. I ask not that you submit, or that you give us troops, merely that you watch and support, and, should the time come, defend us together as allies, as our sister countries should.
So the delivery of the information that you just gave, it was a lot. More or less you said, yo, one day you're going to be my bitch. So I need a diplomacy check, because obviously you're trying to put that in a way that goes over amicably.
I'm gonna roll luck on that one. Yeah, these are hacks. That's what these
all
are.
ones. I'm just gonna hover over and make sure it's actually rolling a D4.
I checked. I just checked. I was like, wait a minute.
Like
1d1.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh my god, how's this going? Anyways, so you are, yeah. So, yeah. They listen to it. You roll me a sense motive. Okay. Are you happy with your result?
What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, go on. It's good to know where we stand.
Yeah.
Hey!
Yeah, of course.
Oh. You can clearly tell there are very mixed reviews from what it was that you had said here. It's not that it went over horribly. It's that it went over horribly for a couple of them. For others, it certainly changed the tone. For others, they're like, there could be fortune in this. There could be like something, there could be fruit, fruit can come from this idea. And there are others that seem favorable to the idea. Certainly, actually, your friend, who is directly helpful, you can see the way, like, as you guys have had conversations beforehand, specifically since motive on him, every time you talk about things beforehand and, like, things that relate to commerce, whenever he seems to kind of get an idea, and the guy knows business, when he seems to get an idea, he kind of, like, looks off to the side, like, thinking to himself for a few moments. And then looks back in your direction, and then kind of like snaps his attention back to you, like he kind of pulls his head from the clouds. He has that like thought here, and so you're like, well, at least I still got him on my side. You know what I mean? But you definitely get very mixed reviews there. If you had to tempt the water, 1 out of 10, it's probably more of a 4, just because the lows are higher than the highs, even if there's a bunch in the middle. But overall, so it gets delivered. So there isn't much conversation amongst them. You can imagine they're going to be purse-lipped until they get into a private conversation. They then, he says, all right, well, I believe there's another matter you wish to discuss as well. Not only the unification of soldiers for the sake of both of our city's survival, not only producing commerce between the two of us, or the construction of a bridge and road to unite the two nations. Was there not a third thing you wish to discuss?
Out of character, was there?
I thought there was. I could be. Then it must be my feeble old mind. You must understand, I'm probably the oldest one in the room, he says, jokingly, because he knows that Jake's definitely older than Scott. Totally a fact. And he says, then on to the matters that we've discussed. We like the idea, and I can tell you, speaking for the council here, the idea of what it is that you are putting forward. There's merits to the thoughts that you have here. However, we cannot just blindly enter into an agreement with a nation who sends forward their well-spoken diplomats and leader, hoping that the words that they say are true of everything that they represent. We are going to have to send our own representatives back to your home. You will have to host a few of our counselors yourself. Allow us to see your people, your culture. Make sure it is something that we want to, in fact, unite with.
It would be my honor and pleasure.
Very well then. I imagine that unless there are things that need to be discussed any further at this point, this meeting is nearing its close. You are welcome to, of course, leave the city at any point in time. You are not being held as any form of diplomatic prisoner. He kind of like chuckles because it's not even like really a joke. It's just in his own mind. And then he's like, but I would say that if you could at least leave behind a few of your guards, or stick behind yourself for a few days' time before returning home, to escort a few of our counselors as they make their way to Kurzfall, to engross themselves in your culture and see how your people are.
I regret to say that the affairs of state keep me rather busy, and as such, staying several days longer would tax my nation unduly. Therefore, I would ask to impose upon you all, and ask that those counselors who wish to travel with me prepare themselves as soon as possible, that we might set forth as soon as we may. As such, it would be my honor to guard and escort those of you who will be coming with me to Kurzfell. He taps the quill. I assure you, this is not simply for show.
They, nod a bit or chuckles here and there. Just, again, different kind of reactions from that group of them. He says, unfortunately, the duties of office are, in fact, as important here as they are in your own home. Leave behind some of your guard to escort at least half of the travel. When you return home, send another compliments to meet the rest of the travel to ensure that they safely arrive in your lands. I imagine your wet lands are well looked after, well guarded.
My lands are well looked after and well guarded. However, the forest is old and deep, and there are many hollows that have not been tread by people for a long time. Hunters stick to the tame tracks, and foragers stick to the same fields. As such, it would sit better with me were I to escort your counselors in person. I wish not to suggest that the matters of your state are less important than mine own. However, with so many capable minds sitting at this table, surely you could spare a couple of fellows for a couple of days sooner, that they might accompany me.
Diplomacy check. Would you like to adjust that? You know Jake's just going to give you the thumbs up.
Yeah, do you mind? I think you give me the thumbs up. Come on! Once!
Your request is understood. We know where you're coming from. However, I cannot answer this question of yours, this request of yours, immediately. Allow us to adjourn this meeting. Allow us to have our debriefing. And then we will give you an answer for this.
Very well.
Then we will call to close the Council of in meeting with and may Lady Orenda herself smile upon you. May your eyes never fail you, and may knowledge never stop to seep into your mind. And it was kind of like with his knuckle with his feeble fingers, no gavel or anything like that. And they all very slowly, gingerly get up and make themselves out of the back room to go kind of discuss. About an hour's time passes with you in this hall alone, either in your seat or pacing back and forth. In the hall with you, you have your unarmed herald, but you also have two of the city guard that are with you as well. Not the guy that you had seen beforehand. These city guard have a different bit of decoration on their armor. You had picked up a bit of their culture by being here at this point. So by picking up a bit of the culture, you realize that these city guard are more like what you imagine being like almost like a royal guard for the counselors. So you're allowed to be privy to conversations like this, even if they're not allowed to partake in them. You know what I mean? And so like there's just the four of you inside the room right now. Maybe you speak to your herald, maybe you just sit there patiently, but an hour passes. And eventually they start to filter their way out. There's actually a back door outside of this hall, and so some of them kind of go out that way to their own ways back to wherever they're going next. Others come filtering through the front way. Specifically, Fox does so, as well as the old guy that did most of the speaking. The two of them specifically came up to others to like say goodbye and thank you for your, blah, 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 blah. But the two of them to continue the conversation. He says to you, It is agreed upon. There are 3 counselors that are willing to make the trek, leaving with you tomorrow in the afternoon. Shortly after the sun reaches its highest points, they will be free and clear and prepared to travel with you. There is a 4th counselor that will not be able to travel with you, despite the fact that they very much would. And so instead, they would like to send a representative in their place. Would this be amicable?
Of course, Councillor.
Would this be...
Of course, Councillor. I thank you for your flexibility on this matter.
He nods and says, very well, then I take my leave, as I have many, a bit of business to take care of, he says, giving you like that look, oh, old man's gonna poop. And he says, I leave you in the good hands of Councillor Wood. And he turns and walks out. And so the Fox looks to you and says, well, that went interestingly.
Yes, perhaps a little chillier than I had hoped, but you can never exactly expect a warm reception when one suggests such things.
You certainly did drop a bit of a news in saying that your intentions are to one day control all of Idir. You're young, but that seems rather ambitious.
It would not seem right to fool the other councillors into thinking that I merely wish an alliance. I intend to go forth on this properly.
He nods. I appreciate the honesty with which you approach these matters. Leshev is an important town to me. My family has lived here for many generations. I've earned this position because I'm not the first, but instead the 5th person to hold this position in my family. So it is important to me that Leshev does well. As to who has what title where and when, the importance is the success of the people, the coffers are filled, and commerce proceeds well. And done so in a not so... Well, let's just say that Hard Gwen does some things right and other things horribly wrong. As he said, I will not be able to accompany you on the journey. I was very much looking forward to it. I would not be able to head that way in near a month's time or perhaps longer. Would you be willing to accept one of my trusted friends to go in my place?
Of course, Fox. Although it saddens me to hear that you will not be accompanying me, I was rather looking forward to showing you around to the city.
That's fine. I'll give you an opportunity to at least spend another evening at my home. I'll invite my friend to come and meet to come and meet you this evening. You can enjoy a tall glass of wine and perhaps a bit more boar than you had hoped for.
Yes, that sounds rather pleasant. Can I just sense motive, Fox, on why
Absolutely,
he's
please.
and why and whether this person's actually a friend?
Mhm.
I'm not rolling that.
Okay. So I think there's only two left. So, anyways,
I mean, they're useless anyway. It's just like, why do I want to add a +1?
hey, if you rolled a 4, that gets you to a 15. Are you sure?
I'm good.
Okay. So, anyways, the he seems to be completely honest. Then I imagine you have your own matters you've got to take care of, and I will see you this evening.
Yes. Thank you again for all that you've done, Fox.
He nods and says, "Hey, those shops that I told you about, this is your last opportunity to go and visit them before you have to leave the place. Please go and see if there's something that catches your eye."
Yes, I think I might. Clear the mind.
Okay. And so you kind of go your own separate ways. We're going to come back to you. And Neil, I want you to take an opportunity. This is a large town, so they, of course, do have... And feel free to literally Google Pathfinder settlements, find large town, find what the general GP value of items you can find in the town is, and think of anything that you might actually want to purchase while you're here. But I'm going to cut the camera over to Jake now. Jake, as I said beforehand, you travel from Rid back home, and the travel is actually relatively easy. These are your lands. They're literally patrolled lands. Once you go a couple miles outside of Rid, just traveling up the river, you're in your home. Funny enough, where it is that you find, what's her name? Hansa, where that small cave that she had, where she was spending her nights, living like a hobgoblin, which you imagine she's not a huge fan of, is only a few miles outside of what is technically your domain. So she was already almost in your land as it is now. But you travel up the river a bit and very easily travel back home. Do you procure a horse for her too, or just let her walk? Like the scum she is.
No, I'd probably ask one of the guards to give them,
Okay, and they will walk in instead. Not a problem.
Yeah.
So,
they can rotate between themselves with the walking.
funny enough, she does not even walk. She uses the horse to carry all of her stuff because she has a lot of stuff, and she doesn't want to leave it behind because of what happened last time she left her stuff behind. Jake, and you guys travel back home. Now, when you get home to your city, your town, it technically is. When you get home to your town, you can see that there's, people about, so on and so forth. Just kind of like things seem to be going as normal. Do you immediately, I imagine you immediately head to the Shrine of Vroga, do a quick little prayer, whatever it is, and then you probably head to your throne, to the actual castle.
Yep.
As you approach the castle, you do come across the warden is standing right inside the double doors that go into where your actual throne room is, but within the castle itself. Right around there, like as you're going towards the double doors, you'll kind of be interrupted from behind you as Kithul calls out to you, saying, "Chosen of the Blade.
Yes, Cthulhu.
I'm glad that I was able to get here in time before you just went bursting into your throne room. Luckily, news got to me that you had finally returned home. I need to give you a warning before you go in there, because they arrived 2 days past and have been staying in the throne room from dawn till dusk, awaiting the return of you, or Aurorum, or Valrin. You might not know this,
Aurorum?
but the chosen of the hearth has gone to investigate something in the land to the northeast. Something caught his attention. He thought he might investigate it, and unfortunately he was not here to handle the situation. It falls to you
What's the situation?
We have representatives of the Arcane Congress. Again, they've arrived 2 days ago and have chosen to spend their time in the throne. The first time they burst their way in, I had it very much in my mind to throw them into the cells below and to hold them there until you arrived back. Unfortunately, the chatter of the other guard suggests that perhaps I would be living my days as a toad. I decided perhaps it was best to let them seek your counsel, the way they saw fit.
In game, do I know what the Arcane Council is? Because I have no idea.
Roll a knowledge arcana or knowledge history. Either one of those. Do you have?
Well, I
do
don't
you
have
have
either of them.
neither
Just
of them
walk in there
trained?
and be like, just be there. Yeah, we're waiting till the others come back. Good night.
Arcana then.
Okay.
Okay. The Arcane Council is the group of wizards that literally dictate the laws of magical learning, magical practice, magical arts in general throughout all of Aeroth. It is supposedly comprised of all persons from all over all of Aeroth to dictate these laws. And as far as you know, all nations follow the edicts put forth by the Arcane Congress.
Okay. Well. I just talked to the guards about. I just say to one of the guards, "Can you see to Hansa? Put her somewhere in the city while I deal with this problem. Deal with this. Deal with our guests."
So I imagine Hansa walked with you towards the throne room at this point, and he turns to her and says, it would be my pleasure if you accompanied me. And she just kind of like looks to you, give you an appreciative nod. Obviously, you have your matters to deal with. She has no opinion of that, and then looks to him and follows him out.
Okay. Cthulhu, where is Elliot?
He stops and turns back and says, he is, well, to the south, in Forvin, as was dictated.
Ah, yes. Great.
I've received no correspondence from him at this time.
Thank you, Cthulhu. Shall we step inside?
We as in you being by yourself, or you with...
Me, Cthulhu, and probably the guards.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were saying Kithul is going off with Hansa. My apologies. So he
No, I just said that to one of the guards.
Yep. So they go off, and Kithul will step inside with you. He does actually give a suggestion. He says, "I'd be more than happy to accompany you, chosen. However, perhaps it's best not to provoke them, as we do not know much about them. Perhaps we should leave the other guards here."
Well, there is wisdom in your words, Cthulhu. We'll bring the Herald then.
Harold, kind of walks in and it kind of worked on his heraldingness prior, and since the first time he's done it for you. And as the doors open up, Kithul being the one to open the door, the Herald steps in, does a little bit of an announcement, and then you step in afterwards. You're not able to see the room as soon as the door opens up because of the formality of what it was that you just chose to do. But what you do see when you do step in is that prior to the entrance of the three of you, the two gnomes that you find in here were completely unaccompanied. They were in the throne room completely by themselves. Now, it's not like they were sitting on the throne or anything so ridiculous as that. They were kind of off to the side and seeming to have a conversation. One of them has a book kind of closed and by his side. You imagine it was open moments ago as they were discussing things, but they were having a conversation. When you look at the gnomes, you've not really encountered too many gnomes in your life, though there was that one recently in Wait, did you? Yeah, in Hodgwen that you did encounter beforehand. But prior to that, really not many. What you can tell about these particular gnomes is that they're kept very, very clean. One of them keeps a very short haircut, one to the point where it doesn't seem like it takes any taming that day, and keeps a very small goatee coming off the chin a bit, much like a Van Dyke would. But it's very kept, very clean, very neat. The whole face otherwise is clean shaven. They're wearing robes that are such a dark, 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 dark red. It's almost one of those. It takes you a few moments to realize that it's red because it's so dark. You believe that it's actually black robes with kind of like the tassels and like the extra etchwork and whatnot done inside the robes that they're wearing are white. The other one that you see has hair that's a bit longer. You can see they must use like a type of pomade or something like that because it is slicked in a way that shows that clearly they take their presentation very seriously. They're otherwise clean shaven, no beard, facial hair, anything like that whatsoever. But their eyebrows are also similar pomade slicks to once again make sure that they have a very, very well presented look to them, right? They're also wearing robes, but their robes are of a similar idea. You almost think they're black for a moment before you realize they're actually blue. And the difference like tassel and etching and whatnot on their robes have a bit of a yellow color to them. These colors mean nothing to you, of course. What you simply see is two very business-looking gnomes. Their age is hard to tell. With gnomes, they age very gracefully. They don't start to gray until much, much, much later in their life, so they tend to look young for a very long period of time. But the two of them look young, but easily could be triple your age. When the announcement happens, they clearly listen to the herald, watch the announcement. Then you come stepping in, having your title said and whatnot, and the two of them, almost in tow, walking in unison, come approaching you. It's not perfectly in step, but definitely a practice walk together. Come walking towards you. And without letting you speak first, one immediately says and opens up and says, my name is Thoughton Whittle, and this here is my associate, Thoughton Wattle. We are here as representatives of the Arcane Congress. We are here to discuss your newly founded nation and the laws that exist therein. Since we arrived here a couple days past, we have requested and procured a list of all of your nation's laws, and they're well written, I must say. Whoever it is that you have in your employ, perhaps yourself, that does the writing of these laws is brilliant, and their structure of the word is, well, impressive. However, we do see there is little to no mention of the laws of Eroth put forward by the Arcane Congress. Please have a seat. We'd like to discuss this with you.
One would walk over to. Is there 3 chairs there?
Yep, as there now always is.
Okay, one would go over and he'd sit in the middle chair.
Okay.
Chair.
Kithel goes and stands by your side. The other guards kind of hang back. And they come over and they say, now please, your title was Chosen One?
My name is One. My title is Chosen of the Blade.
Chosen of the Blade it is. Now, Chosen, please. Do you have in your employ anybody who's familiar with the arcane arts, with magic in general?
Beg my pardon, my lords, he says to them.
Please, we are not lords.
I'm unfamiliar with your customs. I apologize. I'm originally from Kijinksi.
Kijinksi is a wonderful nation, very young, not quite as young as yours, but certainly adheres to all of the laws of the Arcane Congress.
Well, thank you for your statement there. I believe, and he points to the other 2 chairs. The other chosen are versed in the magic of the arcane arts, he says. I myself derive my power from Vrogar.
You say that you herald originally from Kijinksi. I must say, I'm impressed at the distance that you've traveled at such a young age, and the accomplishments you've made in such a period of time. To have formed your own nation, small as it may be, and to have done so much construction in such a short period of time. I believe about 6 months this budding place has been about. It is rather impressive. Are these ruins that you built off of?
You flatter me. Yes, these were here long before we stumbled across them.
Ah, well then it was once again brilliant to build off of the hard work of others. It is an important decision to make because waste not, want not, if you will, and the Mull were certainly a people that knew how to construct fortresses quite well. That aside, you said that the other two chosen of the
Hearth and of the quill.
chosen of the quill. That's quite the title indeed. Where do these two herald from?
One does know, but I've forgotten.
So one is
Malta?
Malta for a quill and Peridot
Yeah.
for the other one.
Yeah, so he just says, chosen of the quill, I believe, originates from Malta, and chosen of the hearth from Peridot.
Roll me a sense motive. You see the eyes in the eyes on the two of them, kind of like different tells, different reactions, but both of them definitely, when you say chosen the quill is from a Malta, you see a reaction from both of them. It's very mild. You don't even think that your two companions would be able to pick on this because neither of them are anywhere near as keen as you are, as perceptive as you are. One of them shifts slightly in their stance. The other one, like their eye twitches for a moment. And you say of Peridot. He says,
At the twitch, I would look at them and say, is there some problem?
no problems at all. It just seems as though that, as opposed to a mistake of ignorance as to why not such laws have been put in place, it was, well, ignorance in fact, yes, but chosen, willful ignorance that's kept these laws from your books. I imagine that you are innocent in these matters, and please do not think that what I'm saying is meant to be an insult towards you yourself, chosen of the blade. You are a man that comes from a very different land, and you do not participate in or practice these arts, so you probably aren't familiar with the laws. However, certainly somebody who's familiar with the arcane arts and from Peridot very likely is familiar, and certainly somebody from Malta knows of the significance of the Arcane Congress. They would have willfully chosen to keep these things out of the books. That is concerning.
Well, I sincerely hope that is not the case. Like you have said, we are a young...
I agree.
He says, one says, like you've said, we are a very young nation. These laws are evolving and finding themselves. 6 months is not a very long time, and by no means can these not be reworked. He says, I'm expecting the chosen of the quill and hopefully the hearth to be back, hopefully within, and he thinks how long he's been gone, and he says, hopefully within the week. Would you mind if I hosted you until they return? Because I feel as though this is more a matter which they would be more familiar, and I believe you would probably enjoy conversing with them, maybe with someone else versed in the arcane.
Oh, absolutely not. We have other matters that we must attend to. Sticking around here would be, any more than we already have, would be a further waste of our time. We've taken the liberty of leaving with your Sorry, we've taken the liberty of leaving within your library the laws of the Arcane Congress. We will expect, of course, that these laws are written into the laws of Kurzfall, because it hasn't been officially announced, of Kurzfall by the time of our next visit. And we imagine that that visit will be happening sometime in the near future. Hopefully, we will be seeing your companions, the other rulers, the other chosen of these lands, next time that we come through. Do you have any questions, or have we made ourselves abundantly clear?
He looks at them and he just says, "Oh no, you've made yourself very clear. Are you sure that I cannot convince you to stay just a few more days?"
They look to each other. If you had to guess, it almost looks like they're having a conversation with one another, even if they're not speaking. They look to one another for a long moment, several moments, and then finally looks back at you and says, "We have business to the south and to the east of here, a few other locations that we need to visit. We'll pass through before the month's end."
"Thank you for your visit. I look forward to hosting you upon your return."
He says, "Likewise, it has been most enlightening. Good day, one." And the two of them turn and they, again, not perfectly, but kind of walk in step out of the room together, opening the door for themselves and so on and so forth. And then what's his name? The warden Kithul just kind of like looks at you.
I kind of look back at him and I motion around the room. Like, I don't know if there's like listening spells or wards or anything that can be placed. But I might, before I say anything, I'm going to have a look and investigate the throne room.
Sure. So you're going to look around and see if there's any form of, like, say, scrying devices that might be here?
Magic sense.
Sure.
I will also, can't exactly take 20, but I will be doing this for hours, if that makes any difference.
All I can say is if you're going to be doing this for hours, I would be so willing as to say you may make 2 intelligence checks as opposed to 1. It's intelligence, not save, obviously, it's Pathfinder, but intelligence check.
Yeah. That's not great.
Nope. You're not smart.
I'm not dumb.
Not dumb. I didn't say you were dumb. I said you're not smart.
So rude, Scott. Get wrecked, kid.
Well,
Who's not smart now?
Are you happy with your 21?
you know what?
Because 21's a really good
There
number.
we go.
I was really hoping you'd say yes so I could have used Daddy's dice. Ah! I wanted to use Daddy's dice on you so bad. Ah! Ah. Okay, so this is what happens. You look at Kithul, you kind of like gesture around the room and kind of like give him a knowing look. Kithul doesn't quite get it. And you kind of like press the issue a little bit further, like, are there any form of devices around? And Kithul is very wise, so eventually kind of like puts it together. And he joins in kind of assisting you searching. He has no idea what he's looking for. You yourself have no fucking clue what you're looking for. You're just not versed in this stuff. This isn't what you do. It's not your thing. So you're literally just searching high and low and finding nothing. Hours go by, and you find absolutely nothing going on. And finally, when all is like said and done, Kithul is like, "Oh, we've searched every corner and under every stone. We've lifted and flicked the thrones and blah 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 blah." Eventually, your character kind of like sits down, slumps in his chair, and kind of like puts his hand in his face in his hands, and says a little quick prayer to Vrogar, like, "May Vrogar be with me if they are spying on my throne room," sort of a thing. And then
Keep talking for 1 sec, Scott. I can still hear. I just need to grab something.
Yep, and that's when he says, So as you kind of like say this like little prayer in your hands to yourself, mumbling to the point where Kithul probably can't even hear you, you hear something. It's almost like Maybe you've gone through a grocery store through like the refrigerated aisle, and you've heard that slight humming of an electric noise. Or maybe somebody left a TV on, but it's black, so you can't see that it's on, but you can hear that it's on. Like that ever so slight frequency kind of noise that you might pick up at a point in time. You can hear this almost ever so slight buzzing or humming noise. It kind of like it's super faint. Like, what is that? And then you kind of like walk around the room for a little while. And eventually kind of get to where you think the source of that noise is. And it's literally kind of like maybe 5 feet or 5 paces, whatever, ahead of or 3 paces ahead of your actual throne chairs. And in the air by about 6 feet in the air, so just shy of 2 meters in the air, you find kind of like where you believe the sound seems to be coming from. You see nothing there. You can't feel anything there. You almost swear there's something there.
Okay. And I can't feel anything. It's going like right through it.
Correct.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay, so if something is incorporeal, that means you'll just go through it, right?
If it's incorporeal, you'll go through it, correct, unless you have ghost touch or something like, or a force spell, but you have to be able to know what you're targeting.
Okay, well, I have a trait called Shadow Hunter that does 50% weapon damage to incorporeal. Can I just swing at that spot and see if anything happens?
Give me a moment. Why don't we cut to break? I'm gonna look something up during the break. When we come back, we'll see what happens. Okay? So, keep everybody on the edge of their seat and kneel on the toilet.